do not live in the real world. You live inside the story your mind tells you. A story about who you are, what things mean, and what the world should be. This story becomes your reality, even when it is wrong. Your mind is not a recorder. It is a writer. It edits, rearranges, adds, and deletes. It builds a narrative that feels safe, familiar, and consistent, even if it is false. You think you know who you are, but yourself is a story, constructed from memories, expectations, and fear. The you believe in is a character, not your essence. When the mind does not understand something, it does not remain silent. It fills the gap with assumptions, memories, and imagination. Ignorance does not scare the mind, uncertainty does. Your emotions do not describe reality. They describe your reaction to it. Yet your mind uses emotion as evidence. Fear means danger. Sadness means loss. Anger means injustice. But emotion is not truth. Emotion is interpretation. Your memories are not fixed. They reshape themselves every time you recall them. You remember feelings, not facts. Your past is not a history. It is an interpretation. Your mind prefers a false story that feels coherent over a true story that feels chaotic. Truth is complex. Stories are simple. And so the mind chooses the story. Your ego writes stories to protect itself. Stories of superiority, victimhood, comparison, and fear. The ego does not care about truth. It cares about survival. Your inner story decides what you notice and what you ignore. You see, not with your eyes, but with your narrative. Pain writes powerful stories, stories of fear, distrust, self-doubt, and loneliness. These stories become the lens through which you see everything. The world does not change. Your story does, and when it changes, everything you see changes with it. You do not meet reality. You meet yourself in everything you see. Your mind assigns meaning where meaning does not exist. A look becomes a threat. A silence becomes rejection. A coincidence becomes destiny. Meaning is not discovered. Meaning is invented. You do not see people as they are. You see them as they appear in your story. You judge intentions you cannot know. You assume motives you cannot prove. Your story becomes their identity. In your mind, once your mind forms a story, it looks only for evidence that confirms it. You do not search for truth. You search for validation. This is how illusions grow. Your story can protect you, or it can imprison you. A single belief can become a wall. A single fear can become a cage. A single assumption can become your entire world. The most dangerous lies are the ones you whisper to yourself. I'm not enough. No one understands me. I will always fail. These lies shape the world you see more than any truth ever will. But if you are the author of this story, you also hold the power to rewrite it. This is not about denying your feelings, but about questioning the stories they tell. It is about separating what is real from what is invented. The first step to freedom is to realize that the bars of your cage are made of thoughts. You can learn to see the story, to challenge it, and finally, to choose a new one. A story not of fear, but of possibility. Not of limits, but of growth. Your true self is not the character in the story. It is a silent, observing consciousness behind it all. The one who can finally put the pen down and see the world and yourself for what you truly are. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more content that explores the mind. But when you begin to question the story, when you dare to ask, is this true? A crack appears. The story weakens, the illusion trembles. And for the first time, you are not inside the story. You are outside, looking in. Thoughts are not passengers in the mind. They are architects. They build rooms you walk into, doors you fear to open, and walls you learn to avoid. Some thoughts construct bridge toward clarity, toward peace, toward purpose. Others build prison small, invisible, yet so strong you forget the door was never locked. Your mind does not merely contain stories. It constructs them. Most people live inside loop cycles of repeated thoughts that generate repeated emotions and repeated choices. A loop begins with a belief. Not a belief written in books, but one carved silently inside you. I'm not enough. No one stays. everything will go wrong. And once the belief is planted, your mind bends reality around it until the loop becomes a life. Memory pretends to be a witness, but memory is an interpreter. You never remember events, you remember the version of events your mind constructed. Two people can live the same moment and soar to different worlds. Not because the moment changed, but because the storyteller inside them told a different tale. Your past is not a museum. It is a script rewritten every time you recall it. When pain enters your story, your mind often creates a villain, someone to blame, someone to hate, someone to hold responsible for the ache you carry. But sometimes the villain you built was never an enemy, only a character your wounded heart needed to explain the hurt. We forget that the mind does not seek truth. First, it seeks safety. And sometimes a villain feels safer than uncertainty. The body heals a wound once, but the mind reopens it 1,000 times. Not because it enjoys pain, but because it is searching for meaning, for closure, for a different ending that never comes. This is how suffering multiplies. Through replay, not event. You are not your thoughts. If you were, you could not observe them. The watcher cannot be the watched. The storyteller cannot be the story. There is a space inside you, quiet, timeless, from which you look at your thoughts as clouds drifting across a greater sky. In that space, you are free. In that space, the story loses its chains. Not every chapter in your story was written by you. Some were written by trauma, by abandonment, by the silence of someone you trusted to stay. These chapters shape you, boot. They do not define you. You inherit scenes you did not choose. But the story that follows is still yours to write. The ego writes stories to protect itself, stories that inflate, stories that excuse, stories that justify. The ego never seeks truth. It seeks importance. And so it crafts narratives where it is always central, either the hero or the victim, rarely the honest witness. We rarely react to reality. We react to assumptions, a look, a pause, a silent sound. The mind fills the gap with fear or fantasy. Most conflicts begin not with actions, but with interpretation stories written hastily inside impatient hearts. Emotions follow patterned secret algorithms running beneath awareness. A smell, a tone of voice, a familiar expression, and suddenly you are not reacting to the present, but to a memory. You think you're angry now, but you're angry then. You think you're afraid now, but you're afraid then. The present becomes hostage to the past. A repeated thought becomes a belief. A repeated belief becomes a narrative. A repeated narrative becomes identity. This is how people become traps, not by events, but by the meanings they gave them. I was abandoned becomes I am unlovable. I failed once becomes I am a failure. This is the cruelty of a story told too long. The inner narrator is not always wise. It speaks with confidence, but not always with truth. It speaks with authority, but not always with understanding. Sometimes the narrator is merely a frightened child trying to make sense of a world that moved too fast. False stories cost more than truth. They steal years, relationships, peace, and potential. You can lose a decade to a sentence that was never accurate. Most of the pain in a life comes not from reality, but from the stories we mistakenly believed. If any of this resonates with you, know that you are not alone, and help is always available. You can reach out to a mental health professional or call a support hotline. Recognizing the story is the first step to rewriting it. Thank you for listening.